Olga from Minerva. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made the lovely Butterick 50-30 dress. The view that I'm going to be showing you today is view F, but this pattern actually has 6 views and it is labeled as easy. All views are a variation of a wrap dress, but the differences are in the sleeves, the bodice changes slightly, there's different collars, and also the addition of a sash or a belt. But as you can see, the fabric that I used to make this dress is a real showstopper. This is from our Minerva exclusive viscose chenille collection, and it is called Reeling of Roses. The print features lots of brightly colored roses in a vivid background. It's super colorful and joyful, and it really reminds me of a sunny summer garden. The fabric has a wonderful drape, so it's perfect for a lightweight summer dress like this. I used 2.10 meters of fabric. You will also need some interfacing. I am using the Violin Vliezolene F220 medium iron-on interfacing in white. This is one of my favorites as it is super versatile and really easy to use. We'll be using around 70 centimeters of this. As far as notions, all we need are hooks and eyes. I'm using the hemline hook and eye fastenings in silver. This package contains 14 sets in size 0. I'm also going to be adding a Minerva Maker woven label to this garment. You can purchase this and other labels on our website to add an extra personal touch to your sewing. Last but not least, you will also need some thread. I used the Gutermann Sew All polyester sewing thread in color 211. All of these items are going to be linked below for you, so you'll have everything you need to sew along with me. And as always, don't forget to save this video so you can follow along at your own pace. Prepare all the paper pattern pieces. For view F, we will need pieces 5 to 7 and 11 to 15. Lay your fabric folded with right sides together and cut the paper pieces out of the fabric. Each pattern piece will have written on it how many pieces you need to cut out of the fabric. Keep the grain lines indicated on each piece in mind. The grain line refers to the direction the threads of the fabric are running, or the weave of the fabric. Woven fabrics, like this viscose chenille, have a selvage edge that runs lengthwise along both sides. Pattern pieces drafted for woven fabrics will have a line with an arrow indicating the grain line. This line should run parallel to the selvages. It is important to respect this grain line because how you cut the fabric will change how the finished garment behaves, fits, and wears. Remember to also cut out the interfacing pieces. Double check on each pattern piece how many interfacing pieces you need for them. To apply this interfacing, use your iron on low to medium heat and leave it on for 8 seconds. Transfer the markings of the pattern onto the fabric. I copied most of the markings using a heat erasable pen. I also took the time to cut out all of the notches. And then I used some stitch marking to transfer the markings that I would need throughout the sewing process, especially the center front. Stitch marking is using long basting stitches to transfer the information of the pattern paper onto the fabric. So, with all the preparation done, it is finally time to get sewing. I started with sewing all the darts in one go. To make the darts, I put a pin through both lines marked on the fabric while the piece is laying flat, and then pinch them together and pin properly. To sew them, I start at the wide part of the dart, making sure to backstitch, then sew along the line marked until the end. I do not backstitch the tip of the dart, but I leave the threads long. I tie off these threads a few times and snip the excess thread. Then I press the darts using my tailor's ham. The pattern suggests you cut the excess off of the front dart, but I always prefer to leave them so I can make adjustments more easily in the future should I need to. When the darts are finished, we can pin the shoulder seams with right sides together up until the triangle markings. Make sure to match the notches. Stitch and finish that seam. In this video, I'm going to be using my serger to finish all of my seams and obviously press them afterwards. If you do not have a serger, that is not a problem at all. You can use your regular sewing machine with either an overlocking stitch or a regular zigzag stitch. Next, we will pin the side seams of the bodice, matching the double notches. Stitch and finish that seam. Before we start working on the collar, we have to stay stitch the neck edge of the bodice between the large circle markings. Stay stitching is a way to reinforce a rounded seam and is simply a straight stitch. Moving on to the collar pieces, we also have to reinforce the neck edge of the interfaced collar through the triangle markings. After, we can clip carefully to the triangles. Then we'll turn in 1.5 centimeters or 5/8 of an inch seam allowance between the clipped sections and press that in place. Trim away the pressed seam allowance to 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch. Now we can pin the collar pieces with right sides together all around the unnotched edges. stitch and trim the seam, clipping the corners close to the stitching. Next, turn the collar right side out and press that carefully. Use a point turner or similar to make sure you get nice pointy edges on your collar. When you finish pressing your collar, go ahead and baste the raw edges together, leaving the pressed edge free. Then pin the collar to the neck edge of the bodice between the upper large circle markings, matching the notches. The pressed edge will be facing up. Baste that in place, keeping the pressed edge free. We can now start working on the skirt. First, pin the skirt back and front sections together at the sides. Stitch and finish that seam. After finishing the long unnotched edge of the skirt front facings, pin them to the skirt opening edges with right sides together, making sure to match the notches. Stitch and finish that seam. We will also be understitching that seam. Understitching is a line of stitches that is sewn really close to a facing or lining, and it's used to keep the lining from rolling out and being visible. It's really useful and really commonly used around necklines particularly, but can be used in a multitude of ways. To understitch, first press the seam really well, keeping all the seam allowances to the side of the facings. As if you were top stitching just the facings, stitch the seam allowance to the facings close to the seam. Finally, turn the facings to the inside and press. We can also go ahead and baste the upper raw edge to keep that in place for now. Before we attach the bodice to the skirt, we will also stay stitch the upper edge of the skirt between the center fronts. Carefully pin the bodice to the skirt, matching the centers, side seams, and notches, and placing the opening edges of the skirt at the large circle markings of the bodice. Stitch that, and then stitch it again 6 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch away in the seam allowance. Finish the seam and press it towards the bodice. After finishing the long unnotched edge of the bodice from facings, Turn the seam allowance in on the short edges and press it in place. Then pin the bodice front facings to the opening and neck edges, making sure that the raw edges are even. Stitch and finish that seam, keeping the pressed edge of the collar free. Clip to the collar seam allowance at the ends of the facings. After understitching the bodice facings in the same way we did the skirt, we can turn them to the inside, turning out the collar. Press the seam toward the collar between the clips. Then we can slip stitch the pressed edge of the collar over the seam. I'm adding my Minerva woven label here. I did a quick back stitch to attach the label to the seam allowance. Then to slip stitch, I slide the needle through a folded edge, such as the pressed edge of the collar. Then pick up a thread from the fabric underneath, in this case the neck of the bodice, and pull through. Repeat this to attach the bodice facings to the skirt facings. Now to start working on the sleeves. Pin the sleeve underarm seam matching the notches. Stitch and finish the seam. To hem the lower edges of the sleeve, we'll start by stitching 1.3 centimeters or 1/2 inch from the raw edge. Then turn in and press the edge alongside the stitching. Trim very close to the stitches. And then turn the edge in again. Finally, stitch that in place. Then, with right sides together, pin the sleeves into the armhole, matching the notches and seams. You can use a gathering stitch to help ease the fullness of the sleeve, but I like to pull all of the fullness into a shoulder and add a pleat or a tight gather. When you've pinned your sleeves in place, stitch them and then stitch them again 6 millimeters or 1/4 inch from the original stitches in the seam allowance. Finish those seams, pressing the seam allowance toward the sleeve. To start working on the finishings, we can tackle the hem of the skirt next. First, we turn the lower edge of the front facings to the outside along the seam. Stitch across the facing 3.2 centimeters or 1¼ inches above the raw edge. Trim the facing. Next, I went ahead and turned the seam up the same 3.2 centimeters all around. Then I basted it using long machine stitches. I finished the raw edges in my serger and then I removed all of those basting stitches. I sewed it down using a normal stitch. Try on your dress, lapping the right over the left and matching those center fronts. Mark the placements for the hooks and eyes. Then, sew the hooks at the opening edges of the front left and right bodice front facing at the waist, and the eyes in the markings that you made. So as you can see, this is a really quick and easy project to make. I did go ahead and add a couple more hooks and eyes to the bodice. That was just to keep it closed, and it is totally optional. You don't have to do that, but you can if you want to. I think that this dress pattern really pairs beautifully with our Reeling Roses fabric. I feel like I'm ready to go off on a picnic in a really warm summer day. If you do end up making your own version of this dress, we would love to see your finished results. Make sure that you have an account on our website so you can share that with us, and if you don't have one already, that's totally fine. You can create one for free. It allows you to post videos and photos of all of your finished makes or your work in progresses, and share them with the community. It's a really great place to be, to find inspiration, to find fellow like-minded people who also enjoy sewing. It's a really nice place to go to get inspired. That is everything from me for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!